Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Sister Podcast,
where we normalize the magic
and sacralize the mundane. Hi everyone, my name is Britt.
And I'm Hannah.
And here we are, 6th episode. We are in our part 2 of astrology. What are we going to be talking about today?
We are going to be talking about the cosmic cycles. So in particular, the moon phases, how we can manifest with the moon, how we can live with the moon, also the solar return, the Saturn return, and we're going to talk about retrogrades and the misconceptions, especially in regards to Mercury retrograde, and how you can use that time actually really, really productively and efficiently.
Oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about today, and I am so excited to dive more into these subtle realms of astrology and look at something other than the sun, moon, and rising signs.
Yes, and you know, one of the things with astrology is really, it's this cosmic clock. It's really about the timing, and it goes through different cycles and different seasons, and just knowing about these cycles can help us so much to become aware of them in our own life and how they show up for us and how we can work with them.
Yeah, I feel like it was such a page-turning event time period in my life whenever I was able to start looking at everything as a cycle, the relationships that I have with other people, where I'm at in my life, things that I need to learn from. It's it just helps make sense of so much in life. Yeah. And I'm just so excited to dive into this today.
And it's so interesting because usually we have this timeline that we think of this is from one point to the next, and it's the straight line. But if you think about it as a cycle, everything shifts in your mind.
Everything shifts, yeah, because time is not linear.
Yeah.
And the more that we're able to lean into the possibility of what it could be, if we know that it's not one thing, options are endless. Prosperity index is endless.
Yes.
So let's sink into our guided meditation so that we can really ground ourselves into the present moment in order to open up this conversation effectively.
Yes. So let's take a deep breath in together. And sigh it out. Get really comfortable in your spot. Maybe do some stretching. Yeah, a little yawn. Have a deep breath in together. And out. Let go of anything that has happened throughout the day.
I was in my yoga class earlier today making all kinds of noise, letting go of things. I swear I was freaking out my neighbors.
It feels so good to make noise. Make noise.
Yeah, it's funny because then I would do it and it's like it gave permission to so many other people to do it, because then it was like ha 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 all over the whole room. It's like, yes, it's needed. So everybody, whether you're in your car, in your office space, or wherever, especially if you're in an office space, let it go.
Yeah, bring out a deep, deep sigh. It's so healing. Have a deep breath in. Yes, beautiful. Allow yourself to sink deep into this place. Now let's imagine that we are in a beautiful nature spot. Whatever kind of nature speaks to you, whatever comes up for you, allow yourself to go there. Maybe you hear the birds singing. Maybe you feel the wind touching your skin. Maybe you feel the ground beneath your feet as you're walking barefoot. And now walk along a path that takes you to the perfect spot. Just the most beautiful spot of paradise that you can think of. And right there, find a little place where you can sit down. Now let's look down on your hands and imagine you are holding a seed in your hand. And you know that this seed has the potential to grow into a big, beautiful tree. And you know that you are holding this potential in your hands. And you know that you have the power to support the seed to grow into its highest and most beautiful expression. Now think about something that you would like to grow in your life. Maybe it's patience, abundance, forgiveness, or healing. Whatever it is, bring your awareness of what you want to grow in your life and allow it to flow into the seed in your hands. And now let's go to your beautiful spot and find a place on the ground that you dig a deep hole in. You place the seed on the side and use your hands to really dig into the earth. Feel it in your hands. Dig a deep hole. You feel the wet, fertile soil. Do you know that the soil is perfect for your seed to grow into a beautiful tree? For your intention to grow into its highest expression. Let's place that seed into the hole and bury it. Now you look up into the sky and you see how night has come over you. And it's completely dark. It's new moon. You can see the stars, but there's no moon in the sky. And this darkness is so healing and comforting. And you know that out of the darkness comes creation. Just like out of the womb, we were born. And now imagine a timeline that moves you forward in time. Fast forward the time, and you keep on tending the seed, watering it and blessing it, and you notice how it starts to sprout. For a while you couldn't see anything. Everything was under the surface and you just had to trust that it takes roots, that it's growing deeper and it's anchoring itself. You just had to trust. But then when it was first quarter moon, when you see half of the moon is being lit and the other one is in the darkness, that's when you start seeing the seed sprouting out of the surface, breaking through. Let's move forward more into time. And we see on a full moon, we notice how the tree is growing bigger and stronger. The branches are reaching outwards, and you start seeing flowers blooming and blossoming. And let's move even further ahead, still tending to the tree. And at the end, the last quarter moon, again, when you see half of the moon being lit and the other one dark, that's when the flowers turn into fruits. And since you've been tending the seed and the tree so much, these fruits are so sweet and juicy. And now take one of these fruits and eat it and really bite into it and feel the juiciness of it and feel how your seed of intention has grown into this fruit that you can harvest now and that is now part of your life. And when you're done with eating the fruit, you have another seed in your hand. And you know that the cycle begins again. You know that you can always go back to the space and always use the space to plant your seeds of intentions and to allow your garden to grow into the most beautiful oasis that represents your life of abundance, peace, love, and anything you wish for, because you have the power to plant and grow anything you desire. Let's take another deep breath in together. And out. And slowly come back into the room. Let's wiggle your fingers and toes. Another deep breath in. And out. Whenever you're ready, just open your eyes, come back into the room. Might do some stretching.
So much happened in that time.
Ooh, I want to hear.
Oh, life is so weird. Isn't it crazy the places that we're able to go in our minds during meditation? It's so powerful.
It is. It truly is when we allow ourselves to sink into it.
Yeah, wow. And what a funny thing, because the place that I went was the waterfall that my now husband proposed to me at, which is funny because last episode, we were having issues and it was the same day on the proposal day that I went. And I was thinking like, oh yay, I'm so happy to be here, because I remember the scene so perfectly, and we had such a beautiful picnic that day, and I was seeing all the foods that we got, and then I went over to plant my seed in the ground, and wow. And then I started thinking about you, because what came up for me in my seed, I just saw myself with my hands raised up to the sky that was just like, keep communicating, keep doing exactly what you're doing. This was the intention for my seed. And then I started thinking about you and seeing your reflection in human design. Hannah has her defined centers, 2 of them as her Ajna, the third eye chakra, and the crown center. Those are her defined centers. This is where she really sources a lot of her wisdom here in the human life. And for you to draw that wisdom from those two higher centers, from your psychic centers, literally like what's circulating in the cosmos, and finding words to give them outwards. That's like your power.
Yes.
And each of us has such a power, such a potent power here in this life. And that's another really great conversation to have about like not being envious of one another, just being able to really regard and acknowledge another person's beautiful gifts that you're like blown away by, but not letting it dim your own light, because you've got something that nobody else has as well.
Yes.
It's so hard to see ourselves as real special sometimes, but that's just like a part of our own inner work process that we have to do, is be comfortable with acknowledging and coming to like know our own sacred gift.
Yes, and I love that you touch on that, because I mean, human design is a wonderful tool too, and I feel like we're going to have an episode on that upcoming too, and also the chakra system, we're going to have one. But even also astrology, it just helps so much to embrace one's own powers. And also when we talk about the moon cycles, when we know what we're going through, but we also know what other people are going through. And then when we compliment them on the things that they are going through, it like boosts whatever they're doing right now too. That's what I've noticed. Like wherever the new moon falls in someone's chart, when you compliment someone on that specific part in their lives, it's just like, just lights them up with so much love. And it helps me as a mother so much too with my daughter, like knowing what is her challenge for this moon cycle, and then knowing, oh, okay, I can really help support her in feeling confident to walk that path down. And it's such a gift, not just for self-reflection, but also for these relationships.
So as a relationship between mother and daughter being 2 years old, being such a free expression of exactly who she is at this time, and really tending to that, can you give us an example of what you mean by that? Because I think this is a beautiful piece for anybody that's a mama who thinks that it's like impossible to truly communicate with someone so young because they don't have the words implanted. The word programs haven't been fully installed yet.
Yes. Yeah. So what she's going through right now, I know her new moon is in, she's a Taurus sun, and we're in the Taurus moon cycle right now. So for her, this is all about stepping into herself and being independent. So I've been really supporting her in becoming independent as much as she can. Like I help her with going to the toilet by herself. Like she asks me for help, but I'm like, no, you can do it. And then she does it, and she feels so good doing it. And if I didn't know that that was in her house of independence, I might be like, oh yeah, she needs help, I'm gonna help her. Obviously, if she needs help with something that she can't do on her own, I'm still gonna help her. But I just really support her in her independence. And interestingly too, it's also the house of like rebellion and like anger, and she has that too coming, and it makes me more forgiving for it, because I'm like, oh, she's testing out her boundaries. And at the same time, I know this is like for both of us like a challenge to like, how far can she go, and how can she be independent and show her independence but still work as a team with me. So it has been so helpful for me as a wife, like knowing about what my relationship partner is currently going through, to be more forgiving about that as well, and just more understanding. And then as a mother, and even as a daughter, like with my own parents.
Yeah, same. Yeah, wow. I love that you just talked on those different little relationships, because right at the end of the meditation, I started seeing, it was like a chart of all the cycles that we can look at, whether it's, okay, so like when we get to the end of a day, we can reflect on that. At the end of a week, and then at the end of like each of the 4 weeks within our months, we're able to look at those with the different moons that are showing themselves in the transits. And then with the month, but then also with the season, because most people after a month will go to the year, but there are so many cycles within that year that we can look into.
Yes.
Every 3 months, every 6 months, every 12 months, and then just so many cycles.
Yes, and we're going to be touching on the most relevant, I would say, the most relevant cycles in astrology, which one of them is the moon cycle, the sun cycle, and then the Saturn cycle, and then we're going to go into the retrograde cycles.
Yeah, let's touch on, with the moon phases, we have to talk about moon ceremony as well. So enlighten us, talk to us about moon phases.
Yeah, so this is kind of what I went with the meditation, very similar to that. So during the new moon is when the sun and the moon are in the same sign, and that's when we don't see anything in the sky because the sun doesn't shine light on the moon. And it's so symbolic if you think about the sun being the illumination, being the awareness or the consciousness more so, and then the moon being like the inner worlds, the emotions, the subconscious. And this is really a time for us to be aware of like what is within us and digging deep. And the bigger the seeds that we want to plant of intentions, the deeper we gotta dig into the ground. And we might find all kinds of stuff down there, all kinds of shadows and fears that may come up. We just gotta keep digging because we can find so many treasures in that ground as well that we had no idea that they were even there. And they were the whole time we were standing on top of that ground, and it was actually all within us already.
And in human life, in our human experience, we're able to achieve these things by doing that self-reflective work. So also, do you want to touch on like the different ways that we're able to source like when it's a really good time to look into a specific avenue? Like with the rotation of as we go throughout the year, the sun is in different places, the moon is in different places. So whenever we know that a new moon is coming up, looking at the zodiac sign that the new moon is going to be into so that we can feel into the energetic persona of that zodiac and know, okay, what's a good area for me to focus on?
Yes.
With us.
Yes, and it's different for each one of us.
Right.
So we have like one collective, right? We're going collectively through the Taurus moon cycle, but how the Taurus moon cycle is influencing you as a Taurus Gemini is different than what it's influencing me as a Leo Virgo. And so this is where it really comes in. When you learn about your natal chart, then you can see in what house it falls, or if you know about your solar chart, you can find out more about that. But even just in general, we don't even have to go like so specific into it. Even just in general, we have the new moon to set our intentions, to bring out our wishes, basically send them out. And then first quarter moon is when the sprout is coming out into the surface. This is usually the time where there's a breakthrough, where there's a challenge coming up, where it's something that we need to step out of our comfort zone. And then we have going to the full moon. Do you want to touch on that something?
I wanted to touch on that because when you said about setting intention, I thought of, okay, like writing your order to the universe, writing your, really gathering what it is that you're looking to manifest. And that first quarter moon is such a perfect time to say, oh, okay, well, this is what I want. But what is it that's getting me in the way of getting that? Because this is what I think a big conversation about the law of attraction or manifestation is, because it's not just simply like, oh, here you go, universe, give me everything I want right now, please.
You gotta put the work into it.
Yeah, it's not that manifestation or law of attraction doesn't work. It's that there's gotta be some darkness to the light, and all the light and stuff is good, but we've got to be able to face our own shadows to be deserving of that greater stuff. Otherwise, how are we going to be able to handle it? We got to be strong with reaching out and getting new things.
So if you look at it from the symbolic point of view, when we think about the seed being underground and we have the wishes of abundance or the wish of a loving partner, but we don't come out and we don't reach out of the surface, we don't break through the wall that is blocking us, we will never bloom. We're just always going to be that seed underground, and no one even going to notice us. No one's even going to know that we have that wish in the first place. So really that first quarter moon helps us to just push through and break through. And this is like where it's so helpful to know about the moon cycles, because it's such a different, like when you're in tune with the moon, you can feel the difference in new moon, first quarter, full moon, last quarter. Like, you can feel that.
And your body, too, because our moon cycles will sync up with it, our period.
Yep.
Yes.
For us women, we have our own moon cycle as well, which is so fun to look into when it comes out. That's like a whole nother episode, I feel like, that we have to put on that.
Nature is so perfect. Our bodies are immaculate.
It's amazing, especially when we start syncing ourselves to these natural cycles. And then when we go into full moon, this is like full moon, full bloom, we're blossoming, everything comes out that was inside of us. And then it really depends on what do we do during new moon, because all of that stuff is going to come out. So that's why a lot of times during full moon, we have more accidents, we have more fights, we have more hospital injuries.
Yeah, this legit too. You can look this up. This is accountable, quantifiable. This is we know this. Hospitals get more ER visits. Police get more things that they have to go and tend to with bar fights and things. My mom worked at an orthodontist office, and they would always have more people coming in with broken brackets. It's legit.
Yeah, so interesting, huh?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can also be so beautiful on full moon if you start doing, you know, a lot of the shadow work already during new moon. All of that stuff doesn't have to come out at full moon, and you can really blossom and celebrate on full moon. This is where the ceremony comes in. A lot of ceremonies are on full moon because we come together and we celebrate and just become aware and conscious about the energies.
Yeah, I was gonna say babies will come on the full moon. I came on a full moon.
I came on a first quarter, which was so my life. I loved the challenge.
Yes.
And Emma, my daughter, she came on last quarter. Last quarter moon. And this is the next one where last quarter moon was the phase in the meditation where we have the fruit. We take the fruit from our tree that has grown, and we're eating that fruit. And then whatever we did the work before, how much we tended to what we want to manifest and how much we tended into our life, the juicier and the sweeter that fruit is.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And some of the ways that we love to do ceremony, I first started doing moon ceremony with Hannah. I had never heard of it before. This was about 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago. Gosh, that's a long time already. Oh my goodness.
It's kind of long, but at the same time, it seems like it's so much longer ago too.
Yeah, it does. Like worlds and worlds and worlds ago. But yeah, starting out with just those new moon and full moon ceremonies, really you're able to do it in any way that you want, whether it's just a self-reflective thing that you're doing, like when you're driving a car or something. You don't necessarily have to be putting aside a ton of time and like approaching in this really ceremonial way, but if you want to, and the potency is inside of you, that you want to be doing something that's really dedicated, you will see the fruits of those labors for sure.
And what I've noticed too is consistency with it. So I kind of like to see it like, you know, in bowling, when you get all of them, it's a strike, right?
Okay.
Isn't it called when you get all of them, it's a strike?
Yeah.
And then the next round, every point that you make is double. And I feel like that's what it is with moon cycles. So when we go with the moon cycles every once in a while, yeah, we get something out of it. But if we do it like on a regular basis, it's like doubling up. It's like accelerating our growth.
You will change your life, because it's not a part of our societal culture that we live in a self-reflective place very much.
No.
So when you're dedicating yourself time, even if it's just for the full moons, just one time a month, you do it consecutively for like 6 months or a year, you will start to see massive changes in your life. This is not something that you know, no.
That's gonna go by unseen. You're gonna notice.
Yeah, just speaking from a personal perspective as well. And I know I'm Cancer rising, so I have a short transit with the moon being my chart ruler, but I'm not even going to go into that. Yes, you will catapult your life forward if you start going with the moon cycles.
Yes, yeah, and on that note, when you go on my website, you can actually download a free moon cycle manifestation planner that has been so helpful for myself and my clients to just keep track on the moon cycles, because it's so fun too. Like now when we are in this moon cycle with Taurus, it's a new moon in Taurus, and in 6 months there's a full moon in Taurus. So that's like another cycle that you can look into. And it's so fun to look back, like 6 months ago, what were my intentions back then, like full moon in Scorpio, and we go back, what was my intention, new moon in Scorpio, and you can see what has been manifesting throughout this time. So especially if it's like a bigger seed of intention that can manifest in like 4 weeks, that often it happens like 6 months. And especially if it's like on a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, it's like those are the times when it's almost like we get a bigger seed in our hands, and we have like, okay, these are the times where you can really plant big seeds if you want to. Yeah, it's so fun.
I love the way that you just described that right now. And the solar too, the solar returns.
Yes, let's go into the solar.
Let's talk about solar returns.
So fun. So we've been celebrating solar returns all the time. We're just like, this is the most mundane thing ever. Everyone celebrates the birthday, but no one is really aware that every birthday we get like a new mission. And this is what we can find in our solar return, which is a different kind of chart that is basically put on top of your natal chart, and you can see what kind of energies are going to be around for the whole solar year in your life. And then with the solar return, it's very similar to like the moon phases. For example, around your solar return, you're super, like, usually we are more confident or more courageous, or we just feel more of that sunlight within ourselves, and we're more connected to whatever our purpose is for the upcoming year. And then 3 months after that is like our first quarter. So this is where the challenging time comes in. 3 months after that is our half birthday, our half solar return. That's when we can blossom, or like things come out from the shadows and show themselves in the light. And then 3 months after that is our last quarter, and that's our harvest time. For me, that's in May. And I told you before, May has been such a blossoming time for me. Like, I had my daughter in May, right on my last quarter solar return. I had my astrology exam I passed. I had my Reiki certification in May. Like, so many things just happen in May. And like, I'm harvesting whatever I put in throughout the solar return. I harvest in May.
Yeah, wow.
So fun.
What a fun way to look at your life, right?
Yeah.
And it's so much fun, especially for someone if you're just starting these practices and you don't have a ton to go on yet. Even looking back in your life, whenever really pivotal times have happened. And it's just incredible, especially if you're into numerology too. Then you can be looking at your personal years and looking back on really important life-changing events that have happened for you in the year that you're in as well.
We're gonna have another episode on numerology too.
Yeah, we have to. We've already been talking about, like, okay, so season 2, we already have a really good idea for what we want to happen in season 2, and we're so excited about it. And we're like, okay, we're probably gonna wrap up on like 10 episodes, but no, that's not gonna happen in season 1. There's so much stuff to touch on still.
Yes.
Many
so
magical
fun.
tools to discuss.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, let's just check out your, maybe that's one of the action guides at the end, but yeah, like reflect on your past years and see when your half birthday is, and see when your last quarter birthday is, and just kind of notice, what is there a pattern that you can find that keeps coming up during that time.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too that especially if this is a newer practice for you, it can take some time to really like feel into what first quarter moon challenges feel like or look like from month to month, because every time it changes. And this is a lot of where you can grow your like eyes for the subtle realm, right?
Yes.
It's like how you gain vision, a different type of vision.
Yes.
Yeah, like
totally.
your psychic intuitive vision.
Yes.
Yes, where everything in life starts to make sense, and where it's easier to start just having more ease and understanding that flow only stops in life when you start resisting stuff. Because you can always make sense, even the stuff you can't make sense of, you can still like find peace and calm in it. And like it doesn't have to, like, your life never has to turn into like some crazy dramatic shitstorm ever again if you don't want it to. This is why we're so passionate about sharing these kinds of conversations, because
We've been there.
we've so been there. And it feels so good not to even, I don't want to say I don't have access to those parts of me, like the really angry, just like, oh, so distraught and frustrated. And
We were lost. I think that's really what it comes down to. Like, we were lost. We were disconnected from our home, from our source. Like, I got to a point where I was like, what's even a point of life? Like, what's even my purpose in the first place? Like, I'm just taking away air and resources. And, like, I got to that, like, really pessimistic, dark place. And because I forgot the connection to our true home.
yeah, and also just to touch on that, we're also not saying that anger or frustration is not something that we should experience too, because they are definitely a part of our human experience. And we don't just think that when things happen that we really should probably respond with some type of anger or frustration, saying like, oh, universe has it all down, I don't even need to worry about that. That's not what we're saying at all.
Yeah, and we touch on that, what is a spiritual person too, that it doesn't mean that we're just in happy times.
Exactly.
If you haven't watched that or listened to that episode yet, do it.
Please refer to previous episodes for higher wisdom.
Yeah.
Love it.
Do we want to touch on Saturn Return?
Oh my gosh.
That's a big one.
Do we ever? Okay, so do you want to talk about that transit and what it looks like?
Yeah, so Saturn return is basically like our solar return. Solar return is when the sun is at the same spot when it was when we were born. Saturn return means when the Saturn is at the same spot when we were born, from the point of view of Earth. And
Saturn's a slow-moving planet.
Saturn is slow moving, so it takes about 28 to 30 years, depending on where Saturn is in your chart. So this is like around the time, like around 28 to 30 is when we have our first Saturn return, and then again like 57 to 60 is when we have our second Saturn return.
And the way that I love thinking about this, the way that it's commonly spoke about, is those times of big transition in our lives. So for those first 29 years, it's like, wow, what are we doing in those first 29 years? Coming to know ourselves. A lot of us may not have those super serious responsibilities yet. This is like our maiden or our
Sun.
sun.
S-O-N.
Oh, S-O-N.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was
Like for men who are
oh,
listening.
yeah, exactly. Yes. This is our younger time. And then we transition into that mother state and the mother or father state cycle, which lasts until you're 58 to 60. And then you transition into that crone state, the old wise woman
So
or man.
fun.
It's so fun.
I'm so excited for that stage too.
Oh, yeah, me too.
What helped me really with those cycles too, the cosmic cycles, is to really embrace aging and to really see it as like an up leveling.
Oh, yeah, me
And
too.
it's so fun. And I remember those times when I was like trying to stay young, especially like working in the modeling industry.
Right.
I like knew, younger models are more desired and I have to like always stay young. And I was kind of scared of getting older. And now I'm just so happy each year. I'm like, yay, new chapter, cool. Especially like my 30 30th year has been so fun and transforming. Like, that's a whole numerology thing because I'm in my 3s now. So fun. Expansion, creativity. But that's another episode. But even just the Saturn return, let's touch on that. Like, you just recently went through your Saturn return. And it can be tough.
Oh my gosh.
Really, really tough.
Yeah, I think
because it's a maturing.
It's a maturing. I think this is another really good thing to touch on because also in the quote unquote spiritual community, there are these conversations around Saturn return and people are like, it's like hunker down and hold on to your pants, guys, because Saturn return's going to come through and wreck your whole world.
Yeah.
And I thought that way about Saturn return before. And I loved, I was driving through Hawaii with a woman that I went to a singer-songwriter retreat with in February of last year, and she said it so beautifully. Eliza? Maybe it wasn't Eliza.
You sang her name so beautifully.
But what she said was that she felt that Saturn return would take away the things from your life that are not having you on your path.
Yes.
Like that you're not on your path. Saturn return will wipe that clean. And for a lot of people that can look like a catastrophe because if they're in some crazy relationship that's really bad or whatever the circumstance looks like, it can just feel very off-centering to feel like, someone's taking something away from you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when you feel like when you haven't thought about your purpose at that point, 28 to 30, and you didn't really want to like change your life or like go into any new avenues, and there's like a fear attached to it. Saturn definitely helps to have like a little bit of a tower moment to release the walls and limitations and boundaries that are holding us back to really be on our path.
Yeah, and we haven't touched on tarot either. That's another one that's got to be in season 1.
Yes. That's what we mean with tower.
Yeah, the tower is a tarot reference. So, yes, absolutely. And it really gave me a new perspective to think, because in my mind, I was like, oh, well, I can cheat the system then by just being on what I feel my purpose is. And then it will all work out. But
it kind of did. Just not necessarily in
the way that I wanted it to.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I want to say it was... new moon in Scorpio whenever I had this. I'm going to tell a little story that lets me culminate my Saturn return experience. So, okay. I had a really beautiful ceremonial night with my now husband at the time. This is 2017. We weren't married yet. And the next morning I had a natal chart reading booked on the phone with an astrologer that I had never met. And she just contacted me online and said, hey, would you like I'm running a special right now of a 45-minute natal chart reading. And I had only had my natal chart read by Hannah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to know what somebody else picks up on my chart. And I sat down for that. I still have my notebook from it. And everything was so spot on, and the one thing that she said that totally flipped my world was January 2019 is going to change your life forever. And imagine November 2017, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a year and a half pretty much away from now. What do you mean? So I'm thinking I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to get pregnant. I'm going to become a mom. And then March 2018 passed. And then April 2018 passed, which are the months that I would have had to conceive in order to give birth in January. And all this whole time, my mom's diagnoses were, she received her diagnosis for the rare type of blood cancer at the end of 2017, and then in spring, at the beginning of the year of 2018, she admitted out loud that she had cancer, because for a really long time when people would say cancer around her, she was like, I don't have cancer. And I think that actually did her a great service because she wasn't admitting it to herself that she had cancer.
Wow.
And then we started saying, okay, so what are treatment options? And this is around summertime of 2018. And she started bringing up bone marrow transplant. And us as a family started sitting down and really talking about what that would mean. And I was in a terrible place for this energetically, because I was thinking in my head, January 2019, oh my gosh, what do you mean? January 2019, maybe we shouldn't do this. Let's talk about it. And my family just didn't want that input from me. I just was supposed to be the wind under my mom's wings, and for heaven's sakes, that's what I was going to be as much as I possibly could. I wanted to bring as much magic to her process as I could. So, in October, I want to say it was October, we found out that her treatment was going to start at the end of November. And then I really started falling apart, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like a month-long process, and then we're going to be in January. And they say that 50% of people who go through bone marrow transplants do not make it past day 30. So I was like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy. And there we were on January 3rd. It was day plus 29 after her stem cell transplant. And she was one of that 50% that did not make it past day 30. And that was my, so this is my Saturn return. This is my page turning chapter.
Yeah.
The 29 years that I had with my mom, and now coming into a time that I feel like I'm allowed to become a woman now.
Yeah.
Because so much of what's been holding me back following this spiritual path and being this person that I feel that I'm meant to be, this communicator in this world, communicating spirituality to people, is I was so held back with my mom, because my mom just didn't approve of so much that I was doing, and she thought that she was so scared for me. She was like, what you're doing is evil and you don't know it yet. And I was like, no, Mom, don't believe that. And now I have a completely different relationship with her, and now that's a part of my ministry, is, you know, to talk to people about having relationships with people on the other side. Gosh, that sounds weird. Saying out loud.
It's so amazing, like your psychic abilities. I think that was like the biggest maturing of your psychic abilities and your artistic abilities as well, and you stepping into singing, allowing your voice to shine. It's been so beautiful to watch you grow through that.
Thank you so much. Wow. Yeah, that's what we mean by saying it's not always the way that you wanted it to be. But,
yeah,
you know, I think in the end it's going to be the perfect panning out.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's free.
And she's not in pain anymore. And that's what the important thing is to remember, because she was in so much pain for so many years, and she just loved on everyone else and cared for them so much that she never wanted the eyes to be on her, and people didn't really realize how much pain she was in all the time. But imagine having cancer within your bone marrow, on the inside of your bones. What a deep pain that is. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. This is gone. All that
Mama.
pain.
Hi, Mama.
And she's been visiting us so much too. It is so cute.
Yeah,
she's
Hannah
been
has
so active.
Yeah, Hannah has specific stories, and I have specific stories.
I feel like we gotta do a whole episode on like communicating to loved ones who have crossed over.
Let's do it in let's do it in season 2.
Season 2. Yes. Thank you for sharing that story. I know it is like really, really deeply emotional and hard to talk about, but thank you so much. I feel like it helps a lot of people to see like a different perspective on Saturn return too, and how something can feel so sad and so hard to let go of, but then also realizing that it actually helps us to blossoming and maturing into our soul's purpose and life path.
Yeah, I've told so many people since this has gone down, because people see me and they're like freaked out. They're like, how are you doing so well? I don't get it. And I feel the same way. If I didn't have my spiritual practice and like an understanding of cycles that I do, I don't know how I would be able to survive this, because my mom is like the closest person I've ever known in my life, obviously. We had such a special connection.
And I feel like with the cycles too, we realize that nothing ever stops. And that's like, it also helps us realize that there's a rebirth. Like it always, life doesn't die, energy doesn't die.
Energy doesn't die. This isn't just like spiritual woo-woo stuff. This is very...
Physics.
Yeah, physics.
Yeah.
Things transmute, but they don't go anywhere.
Yes. Sending love to your mama.
Thank you. And you know what? I was her Saturn return.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And see, this was with me and Emma.
Yeah, you tell that story. Beautiful transition.
Beautiful transition right there. So my Saturn return literally went from being maiden to mother by becoming a mom and having my baby. And it has helped me so much the moment that I found out that I was pregnant, and I really, really embraced being a mom, because it wasn't planned. It was not planned in my mind, but the whole time the universe was just like giving me all these little hints of children are coming into your life. And I was like, am I gonna start working with children? Like what? Whole time, like,
do I need to start using condoms?
Strangers are coming to us and be like, you two should have kids. Just like out of nowhere. And like since then, no one ever has said that to us again before.
Wow.
Ever again. But it was like right around that time, like it was so meant to be. And then on my birthday, I conceived her. On my birthday in Sedona, Arizona. So cute.
Such a vortex. She just like bing, 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 bing,
And
spun in on a vortex.
I could feel it too. I was like, that was different. I could feel that. But anyway. And then 9 months later was exactly my Saturn return, and that's when, and my last quarter solar return too. And so I basically harvested the fruit from the seed that I planted on solar return, literally. I harvested it by giving birth to her at home with candlelight, doing Om music, embracing my beloved, and just welcoming her into this world. She didn't cry. We were just cuddling her up in bed and just, oh gosh, it was the most beautiful day of my life, I have to say. Like, I know so many birthing stories, and so many people told me, oh my god, it's gonna be the worst day of your life, like the most pain you ever feel, but it's so worth it because you're gonna have a baby. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to be on the birthday of my child. I don't want to be like thinking back and be like, oh my gosh, that was so fucked up that day. And I found a way to really manifest that beautiful birth that was just on so many levels so fulfilling, and like literally birthing myself into a new person, into a new mother. And yeah, I was in La La Land, in labor land. I feel like that's a whole nother episode. I would love to talk about home birth and hypnobirthing, fun stuff, also season 2.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was my Saturn return, really stepping into that space as a mom. And yeah, so fun. And I would love to hear from you too, you listeners. Please let us know what your Saturn return looks like if you're already going through it. Maybe we have some women who are in a second Saturn return already.
Yeah, I want to say that's probable for sure. I think we are considering starting a Facebook group for the listeners of this podcast as well, and we'll definitely keep you up to date on that and what it looks like as we figure it out. But this is going to be a perfect place that we could have conversation about that.
Yeah.
And also I want to say on Instagram, feel free to, if you ever want to, tag us in a feed post and an Instagram story post, anything, just using the hashtag Sacred Sister Podcast so that we're notified whenever people are like trying to reach out to us.
Yes. Yay. And now let's go into our last chapter.
Retrogrades.
Retrogrades. So, what is a retrograde motion? What does that mean? So, it basically, when we look from the Earth, it looks like the planet moves backwards. It doesn't actually move backwards, but it's basically the Earth's orbit around the sun is smaller and faster than the orbit of the planet that is going retrograde. And then it looks like we're moving backward, almost like we're on the freeway and we're going past a car. It kind of looks like that car is going backwards, even though we are the ones moving faster.
Perfect depiction. I feel like this is another conversation that to most people, if you were to ask them what's a retrograde or describe it to me, probably a lot of people couldn't do it.
Yeah, and
these anomalies.
It sounds silly too to think like, why would it be backward? Like, obviously it doesn't actually move backwards. It's just if you look into the sky, you notice that it's moving backwards.
Exactly. Yeah, and once we have a clearer depiction of what this stuff in this astrology system actually looks like and how it's just so not woo, it's easier for us to like get behind it and, you know, not be like, oh yeah, well, I'm just gonna let my imagination run wild. All this stuff is true. How? I don't know. Yes. This is a part of the whole grounding experience that we want to offer and, you know, opening up these conversations because, wow, like, what a potent system this is if we're able to really utilize it. But a lot of people can't get past their limiting beliefs as to how this can be true. So once you can kind of get behind that, boom, you open the door for yourself to infinite possibilities.
Boom. Yay! Yes. Yeah, and with retrogrades, it's a cycle too because it's the forward moving, which is the regular way of the planet moving. And then during retrograde times is when the expression of the planet's archetype is more inward.
Yeah.
So it's a more reflective time, more going inward. And when we know that, it helps so much in life because it just makes us more aware of like, ooh, what's going on inside of us right now.
Yeah, it's like experiencing it, but inside or like without words or without having to describe it to someone. It's like knowing that the stuff is happening inside of you, but just letting it be, I was going to say be a soup inside of you. It's so hard for me to talk about stuff like this.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Well, it's interesting because you're Mercury Retrograde. And Mercury Retrograde is about talking more from the inward. So it's like anything that is more like analytical and like direct wording is like harder for Mercury Retrograde, but anything that is more emotional and intuitive is easier to relate to. More the creative, artistic part. Yeah,
I think something that really helped me understand what the feeling of Mercury retrograde is, because that's exactly what it is. It's not the physical experience, like the direct way that most people have the experience. We instead have an internal experience, and that's how we gauge like what the information is. Yeah. So one of the ways that I first heard from you on retrogrades that really helped me understand it was, it's like how in school we have this curriculum that it's like, oh, okay, this is what students need to learn this year, and we read about it and we take all the classes to learn that information. But for Mercury retrograders, we learn by experiencing things. It's harder to learn from the textbooks and things like that. We just want to learn through having the experiences firsthand. Yeah. This is true for myself, and my husband is
too.
Mercury retrograde as well. Are you?
My husband is.
Or you're not?
I'm direct, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can read so much and take it all in.
You're a good learner like that.
But then again, with like, I'm not seeking out the experiences as much, and I can feel with like my husband too. He learns more by doing, which is fun.
And also on the other side, we don't want to say that like those people did poorly in school or anything too, because now I'm thinking of the arguments that some people who could hear this would have. And I think of my husband who graduated with, all honors, and he always had A's in every subject. So we're not saying that like you can't learn this stuff, or that you had a hard time in school, or you were slower than other people, or anything like that. It's just that for his spirit, he learns great through experiences. But he's a freaking super smart guy too, so
yeah,
school wasn't hard for him.
Yeah, it's just really interesting when you look into your natal chart to see which planets are retrograde, because you can have Saturn in retrograde, you can have Mars retrograde, and it just shows that you don't express that planet's energy outwardly, but rather internally. Mm-hmm. And this is what's happening during Mercury retrograde, and there are so many misconceptions about it, and we want to touch on that because we feel bad for Mercury retrograde.
It's just perceived. It's gotten to, here's the thing. When something becomes widely known by the public, we will turn it or deviate it from what it actually is. We make it more appealing for everyone, so then people attach their own meanings to it. So Mercury retrograde, while our collective consciousness doesn't necessarily have these conversations on the subtle realms as much, it's easy to just demonize something and just be like, screw that time period, or blame it on Mercury retrograde, or I'm in a bad mood because it's Mercury retrograde. It's like, no.
Yes. So what is Mercury retrograde and how can we work with it? Do you want to touch on it as a Mercury retrograder?
As a Mercury retrograder, yeah, I feel so at home during Mercury retrograde. Everybody's freaking out around me, and I'm like, yay, happy times. I feel like it's a really good time for me to just go inside about the way that I'm communicating, the way that I am thinking, whether I'm experiencing a stuckness inside of myself that's keeping me from moving forward, or just really kind of doing that self-reflective work that I'm doing all the time anyways, but now it's a really potent time for it to be happening. And Mercury retrograde, for anyone that doesn't know the logistics of it, happens in around a 3-week period, 3 times a year, right? 3 or 4 times a year, depending on the transit.
It's pretty common, and we're going through these cycles because it basically realigns us. We can go, Mercury is the planet of movement and transport and thoughts and mind and messenger. And we can go through these direct motions through the day, and then Mercury retrograde comes, and then it just throws off all our plans. And we have to improvise and be more intuitive and really realign our goals and reflect on what it is that we are moving towards, and is that really the path that we want to go down, or are we actually more inclined to go into another direction? So it's really helpful during Mercury retrograde. One of the advice that is very common is to not make any big plans during Mercury retrograde, just because anything that is too much structured and too masculine, logical oriented is very likely to not go through the way that you hope it will. So it's really nice to just take that time to practice surrendering and going with the flow and trusting and procrastinating if you have to, and just knowing that there is a right time to do those things when it feels right for you inside of you, and you don't have to push them to happen.
Exactly. Let me tell a quick Mercury retrograde story. So it was December 2017, and we booked, my husband and I booked a trip to Thailand where we were going to go rock climb for 3.5 weeks. And we booked the dates, and we didn't realize that literally the exact day that we took off was the start of Mercury retrograde, and then the day we got back was it ending, or within a few days of it ending. And oh my gosh, that trip could not have gone more different than we intended. Oh my gosh, it was hilarious. My husband got sick within a few days of us getting there. He was oh my gosh, so sick. He lost 15 pounds on that trip because he got a bug as soon as we went there. So every 4 or 5 days it would come back. We would think it was gone, and it would come back, and obviously that threw off our rock climbing plans, which was the reason that we were going out there. And we wound up being flexible. Even though he had a fever and he was like feeling so unwell, we were able to come together in a completely different way. And it wasn't a trip that was so focused around like the rock climbing and if he was going to send, or if he was going to develop a project and send it, or like what we accomplished out there. It became like, wow, we really needed this time to reset and like grow together in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And for myself as well, because I wound up getting sick out there too. So gosh, it just made it, but it's like
more internal. It made it more internal.
It made it more internal, but if we had chose to resist against that, we could have walked away from that experience like, man, that trip sucked.
Yeah.
I hated that time. Mm-hmm. But we just leaned in a totally different way. He started developing his tarot practice, which is so internal.
Yeah.
You know, we're just like crying together, doing tarot every day and reading books together every day.
It was such a blessing then in the end.
Such a blessing. Yeah, and that's how your reality is exactly how you intend it to be.
Yes.
Because you can resist things all day long, but if you become more flexible, gosh, you're going to grow and strengthen internally, and you're going to be blessed and rained upon with abundance, because you're reaching outside of your comfort zone.
And I feel like this is almost like another episode too, to touch on illnesses and diseases, because they can be like, they are so looked down on, and we'll complain about it and we like hate them. But they can actually be such helpers.
Yeah, because they're just messengers themselves.
Yes.
Trying to let us know what's going on in our body.
Yes. Yes. And also helping us to just slow down and rest and reflect. Because if he didn't get that bug, you would have been just rock climbing and being really active in that masculine energy. Mm-hmm. But through that illness that is coming to him, it helped you to be more internal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both of us were able to surrender to the experience, and especially my husband, who doesn't really follow astrology a ton. When I started telling him like, it's Mercury retrograde, we gotta sink into this experience, he was like, oh, I get it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I feel that. Mm-hmm. I can't deny it.
Yeah.
For sure.
So fun. So this is the beauty about Mercury retrograde. Don't try to rely too much on technology, or rely too much on like all your plans working exactly out the way that you want them to, but just allow yourself to take a break, rest, surrender, go with the flow, go more internally. And that time can be so blissful and so productive in the end too, because you do the inner work and then you come out of it, and usually it takes like around a few days until a week. This is called the shadow period after the Mercury retrograde. But then as soon as Mercury goes direct, you feel just like everything is reset, realigned, and you're just moving forward.
Yeah, who doesn't want a cosmic reset like 3 or 4 times a week? How many of us would benefit from that?
Yeah,
so much. And it provides itself, whether or not you want to go with the flow or not.
Yeah, it's there either way. You can either resist it and have a horrible time during that time, or you can go with it and just love it. Mm-hmm. Just love the cycles of life. And it's so similar. It's really with everything, with the moon phases, with solar return, Saturn return. We can resist all of them. Mm-hmm. And we can make it a big deal, and we can really complain and hate about it. And then that's what we're going to harvest from it. That's the fruit, that's the seed we planted, that's the fruit we're getting. It's going to be sour and bitter and blah. Mm-hmm. But if we take it with, gratitude and be like, okay, it's a tough time, but I allow myself to dive into it and go deep. And especially when you know your natal chart and you know in what area you're especially asked to dive deep and reflect on, that's when it can help so much too. Mm-hmm. Just see life as a game. That's what I do. I just see life as a game and be like, oh, fun, challenge time, yay.
Exactly.
Leveling up.
Exactly. Yeah, you just mentioned something being tough a moment ago, and it's like, yeah, the tough things are the things to look into for sure, because when something's tough for you, it's your internal system wanting to resist something.
Yes. And
those are the things that once we untie that knot, that tension, we become freed in a completely different way that we were probably really unaware of, that was being blocked. So our energy starts to flow more freely.
So beautiful.
Everything's connected, friends.
It is. is.
Everything's connected.
Let's go move into the action guide.
Let's move into the action guide.
Everything's connected. So the action guide is for you to reflect on the cycles in your life and see the connection and find the patterns. Maybe start with some sort of moon ceremony in some ways, if you want to do the new moon or the full moon, if you want to start with the moon cycle manifestation planner, even just little things, just becoming aware and seeing the moon out there, just becoming aware of what time it is, that's already a good start. Noticing your energy around solar return, maybe your half birthday, what is blossoming around there. Maybe look back into the year, see if you can see any patterns. Embracing Saturn returns.
This is where journaling comes in, like,
yes.
BFF too.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have your moon manifestation planner of Hannah's just yet, journaling is a really great way too.
Yeah, and just edit to it too. Yeah, for sure.
So it might be
So
easier for you to just look at the moon cycles like that you're in now and maybe start looking from here on out, because sometimes we have a hard time really remembering when it's not documented. Oh, what was I doing 6 months ago and a year ago, you know?
True, yeah.
Just as a little... Don't get overwhelmed is what I want to say.
Yeah, just the action guide is just take notice. If that means you look into the past, into present, or the future, that's up to you. I just ask you to take notice of the natural and cosmic cycles of life, because they will guide you and support you on your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, sister.
So good. Thank you so much for each and every listener who has tuned in today. If you have made it to the end of this episode, we are so deeply connected to you. There's some part of you, even if it's not expressed a ton in your day-to-day reality, there's a part of you that is so deep, that is so into your subtle and internal realms. And even if you don't feel that you resonate with this, something about you is curious.
Yes, and you are in tune if you allow yourself to be.
Yeah.
So fun. So what's going to come up for us in the next episode?
I think it's really important for us to talk about spiritual protection. Let's do a whole episode on spiritual protection, what it means, what it looks like, the ways that it can be achieved, the reasons that we do it, and the ways that it makes us so strong and powerful.
Yeah, so especially when you start using these tools and when you start going into your spiritual practice, it is so important to boost your spiritual immune system when you go out there. So that's what we're going to be touching on next episode.
It makes you less susceptible to bacteria and dirtiness from the outside, from sickness and disease and toxicity of all kinds. Yes, thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and we hope that you have a really great rest of your day.
Thank yourself too for taking that time. I think it's always important to also give thanks to yourself for being such a amazing person that you are and giving you the time to self-reflect and go deep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste.